Welcome to Wednesday, Game Fighters. I am so pleased to be here with you, my part-punching pals. And boy, oh boy, do we have a treat in store for you. I am your good friend, as you will know, Rob Huber, and I am here today with none other than my co-host and your good buddy,
Brendan the Professor Riley.
Brendan the Professor Riley.
Oh my gosh, Brendan, do we have a big bout after this? We're halfway through the third round. It is, I can't even say.
It's Titanic. It's legendary.
Will you say the name of the games?
We got Race for the Galaxy.
What?
We got Azul.
Oh my gosh. Brendan, you know, we've talked about this before. It would be irresponsible of you and me to just do this by ourselves.
We don't have the power.
I don't have the power. I need assistance. It is okay. If we have learned nothing in the last year, we've learned that it's okay to ask for help when you need it. And boy, did we get some great help in here. Brendan, introduce our guest commentator.
Rob, I am so excited to introduce our guest commentator, co-host of the Blue Peg, Pink Peg podcast, your friend and mine, Christina. Christina, welcome to the podcast.
It's me, Christina Rouse, Pink Peg. Christina Rouse, Pink Peg. Pink Peg.
Christina, can I just say something after having followed your podcast for quite some time? You are no commentator. You are an exceptional tater, and I thank you for joining us here today as we talk about these two big games here on Game Fight Show.
I am so excited to be here. I don't think I've ever been part of commentary, tater or otherwise, on talking about breaking down games like this in this matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing, and I hope that you will take this to heart because I feel it deeply. You're going to do great because I have listened to you talk about games for years. I mean, you've been at it for quite some time, and I just know that the insights that you are going to bring to the Game Fight Show public are going to be epic.
All right. Well, I'll try to live up to that expectation.
I'm doubly excited because I know, Christina, you have a history as a roller derby competitor, and we've been calling these matchups bouts. So I assume you're going to be able to bring a significant level of elbows and stuff to the match today?
Yeah, I'll bring a couple hip checks and some apex jumps, whatever you guys need to make this bout top-notch.
Nice. Well, we're going to put the star on your helmet for this because we're going to make some points here. These two games, it's easy to make a lot of points about because these are some excellent games. Brendan, do you want to start Race for the Galaxy or Azul?
Well, let's start Race for the Galaxy. It's come its way up through the bracket with some really exceptional battles. You know, it took out Seven Wonders Duel. It took out Ticket to Ride. How do you stand up to Ticket to Ride? I don't know, but Thomas Lehman's tableau building card game, a classic. It's probably unstoppable. I think we have the championship for the whole bracket.
Can I just be perfectly transparent right now? I feel this is an honest show,
Please.
Right?
Oh, you know what? This is a show where we bare our souls. Yes, we build trust, we build honesty, we build friendship.
I'm probably going to end friendships by my transparency, but what I will say is when you all told me I was coming on, you sent over the matchup we were going to be talking about, and I saw Azul, super excited to talk about Azul, and then I saw Race for the Galaxy, and for whatever reason, even though I read Race for the Galaxy, my mind and my brain saw and heard Roll for the Galaxy. So I was like, yes, this is an epic matchup between Azul and Roll for the Galaxy. And then 5 minutes before we logged on to record this, I saw that it was Race, and I was like, what? Oh, man, I'm out of here.
Yeah, I think the friendship you're entering might be yours with our friend Thomas Lehman there. I think as long as you're playing one of his games and having a good time, he's probably going to be happy. You know, here it is. You're already bringing the conversation that is stirring the pot that is this episode. I love it. This is a conversation Brendan and I have had between us many times. Race for the Galaxy versus Roll for the Galaxy. I know where I come down on this. Brendan, why don't you share a little bit of your position here?
I may be reading into what you were saying, Christina, but I'm a Roll for the Galaxy fan myself. I like the clickety-clack of those little plastic cups when you dump the dice down. I find the the different actions in terms of the way that you lay the dice out along that little gray strip. Lovely. I lean that way. I honestly think the box art is nicer too. But it is.
Because that's important.
It's not unimportant. Game art is epic. It is so important.
Well, and the reason I think that I thought it was the matchup because Azul's, and we'll talk about this, is really tactile, right? Roll for the Galaxy is super tactile with all those dice. So I was like, yes, perfect matchup, perfect marriage. But Race for the Galaxy, you got cards and cards.
Just cards.
And some more cards.
That's right.
Brendan, you are called the professor not for nothing because you are, in fact, a professor. And when you're advising your students, when they're taking a test, which answer do they go for?
That's right.
Which should they take?
A.
They're first. I'm going to say I am a Race for the Galaxy fan here. I will hold it down for Race for the Galaxy. It is my preferred game. I find the dice bring a little more luck than I'd prefer when I'm out there working to build my civilization. So, Tommy, I got your back. This is a great game. Now, we've talked about this before in the bracket, and we're going to talk about it again. Will Race for the Galaxy move forward? I don't think you can rule it out. This game, it didn't create its field, but it certainly changed the landscape. When it came out, shots fired.
So I will say the one thing that might carry Race for the Galaxy through to the end is that there's a very particular card in this game that might win it out on all the other games in the entire bracket. If this was a derby team, Race for the Galaxy's star jammer would be the Chuck Norris card, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't beat Chuck Norris in a game.
You literally can't.
Yeah.
You can't beat him in anything. If we scratch the surface beneath that, which it's hard to imagine there's anything beneath Chuck Norris. I assume there's more Chuck Norris. It's Turtles all the way down. But Race for the Galaxy, which seems like, could it be dry? Brendan, is that part of what is keeping you from being a Race stan?
In some ways, it's the thing that people who love Race love about it, and it's the multi-use cards, right? Part of what makes Race so amazing is that, like we talked about, all you have is this deck of cards, and the cards are planets, they are developments, they are currency, they're all the things together, but it makes the game really hard to understand. And when I first heard of the game, the thing I heard about first was how hard it is to learn. Like, people would say, I love Race for the Galaxy, but I'd never teach it to somebody. And I've found that Roll for the Galaxy is nice and smooth to teach. So, Christina, I'm curious about your view on this. We have a running conversation on the podcast here about something we call the Netrunner conundrum, which is the question when people go to vote for a game, should they only consider the base game, or should they consider the whole network of games connected to it?
Oh, I think it really depends on the game, right? Because there are some expansions or full catalog in the game where I would play that way the entire time and never go back to the base game. Where there are some base original games where it's like, I'll play that forever, forget the expansion. So I think it really depends. I mean, Race for the Galaxy has a ton of extra additional content to it that you can't ignore, right? Especially if you love that original game. So I think it just depends. I'm very much one that loves expansions and seeing how a designer can expand that world or that narrative that they're trying to tell or whatever it may be, because sometimes usually those will stay on the table longer than games without it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to loop back to about, 5 minutes ago. I just wanted to say, a game that seems so dry, it's nice that they're having a little fun. You throw in a Chuck Norris card here, right? Whereas when we're talking about Azul, it's definitely
absolutely
lighter. It is a lighter game. If you're just talking about the sort of overall gestalt, if I may, and I shall, it's a lighter game. Well, and if you want to look at just by the numbers, if you're going by the weight, Azul's a 1.77. Race for the Galaxy is a 2.98.
Such a big difference.
Oh, it's a huge, it's not our biggest difference. It's a huge difference. And if I'm honest, if you're sitting down and you're playing your first game of Race for the Galaxy, you're going to look at that 2.98 and you're going to say, no, this is a 3.5. This is a 3.55. I think we need to talk a little about Azul, though, because that's what we're here to do. And if we don't do this, we don't get paid.
There you go.
Wait, we're getting
Baby
paid?
needs a new pair of shoes. So
Dang it.
One of you is getting paid.
I'm using
see.
sort of
I was
the
gonna say one of
royal
you is
we
getting
there.
paid. There you go.
I get paid in joy. Azul. This game came out a full decade after Race for the Galaxy did. So right there, the whole atmosphere of the hobby has pivoted significantly in those 10 years. It's a sea change. Azul comes out, and I think, Christina, one of the things that is undeniable about this game is, of course, the first thing you said about it, because you're incredible.
Thank you.
Right? It is this game on a tactile level. If you were just running a grid of games that are the most delightful to manipulate, Azul could conceivably take this whole bracket all the way.
I mean, I think you mentioned it came out a decade after Race for the Galaxy, but I think it also came out at the right time where we weren't seeing a lot of other games this tactile and this beautiful on the table. Like, this was the first game, well, maybe not the first game because I have an appetite, but one of the games where I wanted to eat all the pieces because they were so beautiful.
Now, this is so interesting. The avid listener will know that this is something when we were talking about Wingspan, we were talking about the perceived edibility index. The PEI on this game is off the charts.
Yeah, I fully agree. And how they haven't yet, Plan B hasn't yet marketed candy that looks like the Azul tiles yet. I think they're missing out on a huge potential.
I'm pretty sure that the reason that the second game in the Azul line, Stained Glass of Sintra, sold so badly compared to the first and the third is that the tiles look so much like Jolly Ranchers, people were eating them and couldn't play the game.
They're just choking.
Here it is. Azul, it is clearly Starburst. Right? Starburst is your go-to. Yeah. Just like it was Jordan Almonds when we were talking about Wingspan, and just like it's Jolly Ranchers when you're talking about Stained Glass. Here we have, clearly, this should be maybe Now and Laters. But
yeah.
No one likes Now and Laters. Come on.
But, Now and Later, that is one of the axes upon which this game turns. Because do I take these tiles now? Or do I take them later? Christina, I don't know if you're familiar with a phrase that Brendan has coined relating to games like this.
This is a concept I came up with.
Yes.
It's never been mentioned before.
Trademark. Hate drafting. This game inspires, rewards hate drafting in a way that certainly, Race for the Galaxy, it's not even an issue. You're not really competing against anyone. There's no market. But oh boy, Azul, do I take this now or do I hope I can get it later?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I also found with Azul is it's difficult to play with people who've played it a ton and then new players because those new players are like, I don't know what's happening. And the OGs who have played are like, I will hate draft you because I know how to play this game. And the new players are just left without anything. And it's kind of sad and pathetic that happens, but you have to be that way when you play Azul, right? You're really looking out for number one, which some people love hate drafting.
Yeah.
It feels like in Azul, there's often a moment where you have a choice, like, I could take this thing that does a little bit for me, or I could take that thing that does a little bit for me and dumps 25 blue tiles on you that you can't use. Yeah.
It's like, how mean can I be?
Exactly.
What will it take to get my father-in-law to punch me? You might find out with Azul.
I really hope that Calico makes the bracket next year because
Yes.
There's an oft-told story in my family where my father-in-law needed a particular Calico tile, and it came out before his turn. And as my wife was reaching for it, he said, "I will murder you."
And that is the kind of familial interactions that this game can really inspire. It's just what the hobby's all about.
That's
Adult child aside, I guess.
Christina, where do you put Azul in the great lineup of tile laying games?
Yeah, so I love Azul. I lied. So clearly I'm being super honest right now. I don't know what you and Rob pull out of me, but honesty is one of them. Stained Glass Sintra was not my favorite of Azul, and I think it's because I was so married to Sagrada. Like that's my stained glass game. Anything else, get out of here. Like I don't want to see your face. So Azul has talking about the catalog that it comes with. It has the base game. It has Summer Pavilion. It has stained glass. But as a tile laying game, and it being super tactile and the components are really rich, it ranks up there pretty high as far as components in tile laying games. Gameplay of tile laying games, it's not my favorite tile laying game for the gameplay of it, just because I like there to be a little more game in my tile laying games. And Azul has game in there, but Rob, you said it's ranked pretty low in difficulty. It's super accessible, which is, I think, great for families. And if you don't want to, you want something lighter and not heavier, but it's a great tile laying game.
No question. There can be no doubt. Look at it. It's ranked 50th overall on the BGG ranks. It comes to us courtesy of the Excellent Eight because, boy, did this ever win some awards back in 17 and since then. When it comes down to complexity, if you want a little context, Camel Cup, yeah, thank you, is a 1.74. It is 0.03 less in the weight scale than is our dear Azul here. And just one is a 1.06. So if you're looking to place that on the bracket, that's sort of where it falls in between here.
I find I have to take the Board Game Geek Raiders to task there. As much as Camel Cup is a delight and Just One is lovely, I think maybe Azul is a little underrated. As you play a few times, it's easy to teach the first play, and by the second game, they understand it. But the more you play, the more you start to see 3-4 moves out. You start to look at, okay, if I take from this spot, then it's going to dump those in the middle, and Christina's going to take those ones probably. And I think there's a lot more depth. It is definitely a tactical game more than a strategic one. So I agree that the kinds of big strategies that you can do with a more complex tiling game aren't here. But I feel like saying it's, within a tenth of a point of complexity of Just One.
No, that was of Camel Cup, not of Just One. Christina, when you bring Brendan to the party, you're going to bring rigor. Brendan has played literally thousands of games of Azul versus Big Blue, the supercomputer. and he has proven that, yes, when you start looking orders of magnitude of moves into the future, this game really does take on a different tenor in its play. But that is not something that most of the sort of day-to-day plays are going to reveal. I want to take a second to talk about these designers. I want to talk about the designers who brought us these wonderful games. Now, Race for the Galaxy, Thomas Lehman. Now, we said he's been making games for quite some time. And most recently, I don't know if you guys have been following his output, but he has been working on so many of the pandemic expansions and standalone games. He is that second name on those games. So, it's not like he is stuck in 2007. He's still putting out games to this day.
I think that's something to be said, right? When you have a classic designer who puts out a classic game. I think Race for the Galaxy is a classic game, right?
No question. No question.
That means something when you see that designer's name on other games because it's relatable to you. Like if I loved Race for the Galaxy and I see Mr. Lehman's name on a game box, I might be like, well, I'm going to pick this up and buy it just because it's him.
Sure. I guess another thing you could take away from this is when Matt Leacock is looking to work with someone on a game, in the pandemic verse. A pandemic which is still
It's holding on.
in the bracket. No one's going to turn you down. It's like if the Muppets ask you to do something, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
You know? So the fact that when he wants to expand pandemic, do a hot zone, do a contagion, do a the cure, do an expansion to the base game, that he's knocking on Tommy L's door, that means something.
Christina, I can't remember if y'all reviewed this, but Thomas Lehman's newer game, Res Arcana, feels very similar in some ways.
We didn't do a deep dive on it, but we did a discussion of it, and that wasn't one of my favorite games.
So I was curious because I know that game's getting a lot of buzz right now because it just showed up on Board Game Arena. And and so I'm wondering if some voters are going to see, for people who really like the way that he puts together a tableau building game, maybe they're going to see the more streamlined Res Arcana and say, Race for the Galaxy doesn't need my vote anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's true about a lot of these games in the brackets you guys have, is like, who knows what's going to come out next and bump these games out the window just because there's so much new stuff coming.
Oh, well, constantly. Yes,
constantly. Every second.
When you're choosing what game you're going to play, and for that matter, what game you're going to go to Twitter, to at Game Fight Show.
At Game Fight Show.
And you're going to vote for it when you do so. There are so many games that are incredible games that I'm going to die never having played. No matter how many games I play, you can't keep current. So, one of the things that I hope that our Game Fight Show is going to help you do is going to help you decide which ones you want to spend time with. Speaking of spending time with, and speaking of designers, I want to just loop back for 1 second. When you talk about Azul and its designer, Michael Kiesling, it's so interesting that he worked with Wolfgang Kramer on almost every game that he released up to Azul. And then he comes out and just this huge hit solo.
Yeah.
I hope Wolfgang is doing okay.
Well,
he is doing just fine. Like, the games he puts out as well, like...
well, no question. No question.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when Tom Petty left the Heartbreakers to do Full Moon Fever. Whew.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that in Germany, they call the method of keeping score in which you put the points around the outside of the board the Kramer track.
Exactly.
So I think, I think
he's,
Kramer's doing all right.
Oh, don't cry for Kramer. What we should do is rejoice that these two wonderful designers have given us so many products together. Such an interesting design process they have. That they almost never meet. That it's all by
person.
phone and fax. Yeah.
Oh.
Like they fax each other. Go fig. I am so excited by this matchup. I am so excited to see how it turns out. I am so excited that it is not my responsibility to decide how it comes out. Whose responsibility was that again, Brendan?
I believe that's the responsibility of the voters.
The voters. That is correct. You're going to go to Twitter. You know this, good listener. You go to Twitter at Game Fight Show.
Game Fight Show.
And, you just do our 3-part process. You vote, and you're done. Hopefully, we've given you some context. We've given you some insight. We've given you a direction. We are your North Star for setting how you're going to decide between these two games. And I'll tell you, for me, it's not an easy choice because these are really some great games for my money. I love them both.
I think it's a very easy choice if you were to ask me.
You know what? I am a very insightful person. I notice small cues.
There you go.
I
didn't want to come out and I don't want to come out and say it. I don't want to jade anyone or bias them onto what they think. But there's a clear winner here.
Brendan and I hold ourselves, as you will know, to the strictest code of journalistic impartiality, objectivity, and basically overall integrity. But it is not something that we require of our guest expert commentators. So, you don't have to feel at all bad if anyone has read between the lines at what your leaning might be, because one of the reasons you're here is to bring those expert insights and opinions
There we
I guess
go.
that's two of the reasons, because that is not one thing.
I'm happy to be here, and anytime you need me to be suggestible to your listeners, you let me know.
I think our listeners are going to be so excited at having heard you that they're going to want to seek out more of your insights. And I happen to know an excellent place for them to do so is over at the Blue Peg, Pink Peg podcast. Am I mistaken?
I mean, if you enjoy three folks sitting down talking about board games, sometimes talking about just a bunch of random other stuff that we try to tie into board games that we hope is entertaining, then that is where you can definitely check us out at. The whole premise behind Blue Peg, Pink Peg initially was about board games and relationships and the interaction between that. So we're pretty proud of that platform, but we talk about all kinds of stuff, light games,
Sure.
heavy games, good tile laying games like Azul, whatever.
There's a lounge for legacy games.
There is. Yeah, Rob loves himself some legacy games, so we created a little segment called the Legacy Lounge. It's a highly debatable lounge as far as your vision of what that lounge might look like could be very different. But yeah, we have a lot of fun little segments. We have a Harper's Bazaar where we talk about games you can play with your kids, and it's just fun. It's Blue Peg, Pink Peg. We are on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're wherever you can get your podcasts. That's where you can find us. And Blue Peg, Pink Peg is the handle for all of the social media things: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever we're at. That's the name.
Do yourselves a favor, look them up, and you know what? Boy, talk about a back catalog. If you've got a couple minutes to burn here, your enforced stay-at-home time, you can really revel years of insights from your Blue Peg, Pink Peg pals. Brendan, do you have anything that you wanted to pipe in with?
As an avid listener as well, I expressed before how excited I am to have Christina join us today. I want to say, Christina mentioned that sometimes they talk about sort of random things. And one of my favorite parts of the podcast is that each episode starts with a little bit of random nonsense that is both informative and somehow ties into the show. And so you can just spend the whole episode pondering like, wait, what does the serial killer from the World's Fair of 1888 have to do with, I don't even remember what game you were playing that week, but with Paris, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the end, when you have your guests, you can email in, and sometimes you win games. I've won games. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I know this, yes. If we're putting our cards on the table, and as I've said, Brendan and I are obligated to do so as much in this podcast for maintaining that integrity of our journalism. It's equally important in that regard as it would be in Race for the Galaxy if you want to win. You got to put those cards on the table. Brendan has just been hoping and praying that this day would come. So excited to have you, Christina. We are true fans, and we're just thrilled that it happened.
Yeah, I'm so excited that we did this, and I'm even more happy that it was this particular matchup because I'm a tile lane freak. So anytime you guys need some commentary, we would love to come back and hang out with you guys.
Awesome. Speaking of people coming back with commentary, I wonder if Eleanor would be willing to comment on which game won when Everdell came up against the crew, the quest for Planet 9. Eleanor?
All right, you know what time it is? It's results time. The crew didn't do the trick, as they were left breathing the thin stuff when Everdell defeated them in Monday's exciting match. That's all we have for today. Back to the hosts.
Well, if you had told me that the crew was going to go all the way to win this whole thing, I wouldn't have been shocked. But I'm going to tell you, if you told me that Everdell went all the way, I wouldn't be shocked by that either. So I'm happy here. What do you think, Christina, about that outcome?
With all the buzz that's going on lately about the crew and just the amount of people who have talked about the crew, I for sure thought that would beat out Everdell, hands down, right? But I think as one who is not a trick-taking game player, I've played the crew multiple times. It's not my thing. I'll play it. So I think Everdell is maybe a little more accessible, and that's why it might have beat out the crew.
You can never quite count out the significance of having adorable woodland creatures. Brendan?
I suspect that the people over at Starling Games were planning this, knowing the March Mayhem tournament was going on. They launched the Kickstarter for the next 2 expansions during the tournament, and that had to generate some voter buzz. You know, there's no Kickstarter for the crew going on right now. That had to hurt their voting.
Although, in fairness, Brendan, the crew did announce that their expansion, the Undersea Adventure, was coming out during the bracket too. So, you know, to the extent that either of them were doing a little dirty pool, there's no regulations against it. Yeah. And they both were doing it. I'm going to say this was a fair fight and let it go forward. And going forward, I would like to also send, as we go forward, Christina, Game Fight Shows, Rattlebox Games' March Mayhems, and my deepest thanks for spending this evening with us discussing these excellent games. Christina, thank you so much.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
That's my best announcer voice. I'm sorry.
No, that's great.
I love it. You did it perfectly. And this is coming from someone who has sat inside of the Bigfoot monster truck. Brendan, I want to thank you for, you did okay. And I want to thank Eleanor and the voters as well for doing such a great job. Hey, gang, you guys are all just the bee's knees. Don't let anyone tell you different. You heard it from Rob. You're swell. We're going to see you on Friday with another big bout. Until then, just do your best.
Game Fight Show.
Brought to you by
Rattlebox Games.
Brendan.
Yeah, Rob.
I think I'm dying.
Don't die, Rob.
I'm going to take a little drink here.
I hope you leave that in there.
Maybe at the end. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Sounded good.